afternoon, depending on where you are. We are here at the fourth webinar of our series, and we are here to discuss women entrepreneurship. This is a topic of growing importance for us at ERIA. We have just started a project on women and the digital economy, also linked to entrepreneurship, and we will be very happy to share more details with you very soon. But of course, it's also a very important topic for ASEAN and beyond, especially now. I mean, when we are starting thinking how to rebuild our economies, and we want to rebuild inclusive economies working for all. Women represent half of the population, and this is why, in addition to inclusiveness, women entrepreneurs are also very important for the economy, for economic growth and well-being of us all. Over the past decade, the number of women becoming entrepreneurs within ASEAN has been increasingly steadily, and digitalization has been a major enabling factor, empowering many women to start businesses, sometimes from the comfort of their homes. According to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2018, more than 60 million women across ASEAN were operating businesses, the majority of which were small and medium enterprises. However, and despite these positive trends, we all know, thanks to lots of analyses, academic literature, that there are still many challenges in both developed and developing countries. Women entrepreneurs face more difficulty in accessing credit on average, not only when they want to start a business, but also when this is fundamental for the survival of their firms, like in times of economic downturns, as we are seeing right now due to the crisis generated by the pandemic. And when we talk about, for instance, in venture capital for high-tech startups and technology firms, numbers are still not so good. Some averages, some estimates, they show that between 85 and 90% of these firms globally are owned and led by men. So there's still a long way to go to make sure that women are well and much better represented in this area. So we'll talk about all these and more with our 5 speakers today. We're extremely happy to have them with us. We welcome Rata Chea, who's the founder and CEO of Kmum Technology in Cambodia. Thank you very much, Rata, for being with us. Rata is an accomplished software development executive with a proven track record in understanding new technologies, focusing on continuous improvement and re-engineering business processes. Before working at Kmum, Rata started her career in the United States as a financial analyst, where she received the Employee of the Year award. She also worked in the IT department in the multi-billion revenue healthcare delivery system, and she has also been a senior financial analyst at IBM Logistics in Australia. Rata has a Bachelor of Computer Science from the University of California, Irvine, and an MBA from Cal State University, Fullerton. And Rata, she also very much engaged in supporting women entrepreneurs. She's a member of the Cambodia Women Entrepreneur Association and She Investment. And also she's in charge of women development programs to support and accelerate the empowerment of women in general and as entrepreneurs in Cambodia. Thank you, Rata.
Thank you.
We also welcome Phi Van Nguyen, the chairwoman of the Vietnam Angel Network. Phi Van Nguyen holds an MBA from Australia, majoring in marketing communication. Her experience spans over 20 years as a senior executive in brand, retail, franchise development across global emerging markets, Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Eastern Europe. And currently, she's advising the project 844 under the Ministry of Science and Technology of Vietnam on startup and innovation. And she's the chairwoman of the Vietnam Business Angel Network and Open Innovation Vietnam. She has received many awards, including in 2019, the ASEAN Outstanding Business Award. And she's the author of 5 books, one of them called Go Global, an MSME Guide to Global Franchise. We have with us also Laurencia Lisa, who is the CEO of Cyber Olympus, an Indonesian company based in Yogyakarta. Laurencia has a passion for technology, driving her to provide software, application, and social media marketing for companies. She also runs other businesses in robotics, games, computing, and a learning center called Krog International to bring technology education to kids. Her mission is to help more business to grow with advanced technology and prepare the young generation for global competition. Laurencia has a Master of Information Technology focused in game design and mobile application from the James Cook University in Singapore. Thank you, Laurencia. We are also very pleased to have with us Bernard Lee, who is Program Director at APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Secretariat in Singapore, who is currently responsible for the APEC Policy Partnership on Women and the Economy. He previously supported the APEC Committee responsible for economic and technical cooperation and the high-level post-2020 visioning exercise for the region. Bernard is a diplomat, a trade negotiator, and a lawyer, and he has served in the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C., and the Canadian Mission to the European Union in Brussels. Thank you, Bernard, for being with us. Welcome also to Deanna Morris from the United Nations ESCAP. Deanna is a Program Manager Officer of the Technology and Innovation Section, Trade, Investment, and Innovation Division in the United Nations ESCAP. She manages the innovation financing component of a program on catalyzing women's entrepreneurship, and she has led the establishment of UNESCAP Women's Impact Investment Fund, and also works with key partners to implement a FinTech Challenge Fund across the Asia-Pacific region, and we will hear more about that soon. Prior joining ESCAP, Diana was the Deputy Program Manager of the Shaping Inclusive Finance Transformation Program at the United Nations Capital Development Fund. Now, just before starting the first round of questions, let me just remind you to please keep your microphone muted throughout the webinar. But while keeping the microphone muted, we encourage you to use the chat box to leave us comments, ideas, or questions that we will then use towards the end of the webinar for our Q&A. So we are ready to start for the first round of questions for our speakers. And I would start with our three entrepreneurs, Ratafi and Laurencia. And I would ask her to share a little bit about their businesses with us, how the pandemic has affected their businesses, and also whether being a woman entrepreneur has made any difference in business discussion, engagement with government, not only now, but also at the beginning of their careers as entrepreneurs. And I would perhaps start with Rata. Rata, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a great honor to be invited to this meeting. My name is Rata. I'm from Home Technology. Home Technology is an e-commerce platform with an app-based end-to-end marketplace that connects MSME, emphasizing women-led businesses to consumers in Cambodia and beyond. Driven by a mission to increase digital literacy, promote local products, and create more jobs and opportunity to reduce poverty. Right now, we are working on three main impact areas. Women-led MSME, e-commerce needs are still undeserved, especially in response to the pandemic. And number two, MSME survival and growth is essential to economic development. Platform also enhance business skills through the financial reporting. We offer increasing in the likelihood of the business growth because we also tracking a financial report in our e-commerce platform. Onboarding process is an education and upskill for the MSME. So those are the three impact areas that we are working on. Basically, our regarding to the question about the women entrepreneur in Cambodia. Cambodia is not very different from other countries in the world. Women run about 65% of the business in Cambodia, but 96% of those businesses are micro-size and engage less than 4 people. and they are participating in the informal economy. According to the study from the Ministry of Economy and Finance, we still have limited support in terms of the entrepreneur ecosystem in Cambodia. Women entrepreneurs are very easy to face many challenges, including the lack of support in terms of finance, information, technology, challenges including knowledge, effort for the business development, and also limited help from the government in terms of law and regulation. For that reason, women entrepreneurs are still invisible in Cambodia and didn't give much value. Also prevent Cambodia from the ability to speed up the economy and face many challenges in terms of productivity, innovation, and high-skilled human resources. The Ministry of Economic and Finance forecast that if Cambodia can create an environment that can support entrepreneurs in Cambodia, Cambodia can generate additional income around $25 billion to inject into the national economy, which means Cambodia can generate additional income if we bridge the gender gap in the SME sector by scaling up women, micro, small enterprise, supporting them to enter the formal economy and create long-term social economic impact through job creation and women economic empowerment. For those reasons, many organizations and investors are seeing that investing in women in Cambodia is not a charity, but rather is an opportunity. So I think that, and also regarding to the pandemic, Gulia mentioned earlier that I'm part of the Cambodia Women Association member. We have about 500 members, and during the pandemic, we did some survey ourselves to see how the small medium business how much they've been affected by this pandemic, the COVID. So the data response we received that 90% of business owners they need to close down their business during this COVID. However, during this difficult time, the government have been launching a lot of initiatives such as MSME Bank, Agriculture Bank, and also those banks have really good rate for the small SME. Also, we Ministry of Economy also launching this there's a lot of stimulus package that the MSE can apply during this COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rata, for this very interesting perspectives from Cambodia. So now let's move on with Phi-Van, Vietnam. Phi-Van, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Phi-Van, and my perspective about women-led business is that I never think about either myself or any startups that I have invested in as having any difficulty or having any difference from men-led startups. So I don't even think about it when I invest. It all depends on the quality of the project and the quality of the team members or the founding team when we talk about business. Having been a global executive, an entrepreneur, and now an angel investor myself, I think we probably don't need to talk too much about how to go out there and fight, but more on accepting the fact that women is already having equal rights and equal opportunities with everyone. The more we talk about fighting, the more we think that we're less or inferior. So I think equality is already there. You just take it for granted that it's already equal. Secondly, during the pandemic, I think in Vietnam, everyone is affected. It doesn't really matter, it's a women-led business or it's a men-led business. We've gone through a really difficult time, but I think out of the challenges, we have seen a lot of opportunities. First of all, small and medium enterprises, obviously, think more about the day-to-day operations of their businesses, and less about the future, and less about digitalizing the future. So the pandemic itself is only a good reason for everyone to think back and reset and say, okay, I can't delay this any longer. I just have to digitalize my business. I just have to think about the new business of the future, the business that is tech-enabled and sustainable for industrial 4.0. So obviously it affects everyone, but at the same time, I think it's great that it gives us a reason to change, to transform, because it's out of necessity and survival. Thirdly, I think in the first 6 months of the pandemic, I have invested into more startups than ever before, within 6 months. And why is that? Is because when the tough gets going, you basically have to be very down to earth and think about your future sustainability. And therefore, a lot of startups, especially those that I have talked to in Vietnam, have realized that it's better to have a person to journey with you into the future more than just getting financial aid or financial contribution. Out of the 4 that I have invested in, 3 are actually women-led. I think in this particular time, women are more adaptable. We are more sensitive. We have high IQ, so EQ, so we are more sustainable. Yeah, we're more adaptable for the future itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fivan. Now let's get the third point of view from Laurencia. But let me also remind you to please, in case you want to ask questions, we have just a chat box. Just use it. Now to Indonesia with Laurencia. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity for me to join this webinar and be a part of this event. I'm from Indonesia, and I'm running IT solutions, and also running robotics and game learning center in Yogyakarta. And this pandemic doesn't really affect my IT solutions because we provide like mobile apps, websites, and graphic designs where everyone needs solutions for their businesses, especially the business that needs digitalization. So it doesn't affect my business in IT solutions, but it did impact in my business in robotic and game learning center because of the pandemics. So all the activities, learning activities that we running need to be stopped because we need to do it from home. So every students and the parent students, they decided to stop the activities because they are sick of online learning. So it did impact my business, but luckily now it's getting better now because of the governments allow the businesses to open to running their regular activities. So the economics are getting better in Indonesia. And for the women entrepreneurs in Indonesia, I think Indonesia have gender equity and women empowerment. And a lot of angel investors in Indonesia, they support women. Like Angin in Indonesia, they give funding for startups in Indonesia, especially for women, and many other startups that focusing on women. And in this during this pandemic, many new entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, showing up because they want to sell their products online. So the marketplace become the solution for them, especially for wife, and then for some of them that got fired from their jobs, they take it as an opportunities. So they can so there are no border for them to be an entrepreneurs in during this pandemic. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Laurencia. Lots of dynamism. Very interesting to hear these very different, this similar but also different perspective from 3 different ASEAN countries. Now let's get a broader perspective, both from APEC and Asia Pacific. So let's now invite first Bernard from APEC to share with us trends and perspective from the APEC region. Bernard, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm heartened to hear the 3 introductions from colleagues on the panel, which seem very uplifting and encouraging about opportunities for women. At APEC, we've tended to look at some of the more the broader dynamics, and it seems emerging evidence would suggest that the pandemic has had quite a disproportionately negative effect on women. And this may not necessarily be the sectors that my 3 colleagues have been talking about, but more in some of the more traditional sectors where still many women are employed. So women entrepreneurs and women-led businesses are overrepresented in some of the sectors that were directly affected by the border closures, the lockdowns, the social distancing measures. You know, these are in the areas of travel and tourism, on food and beverage, retail, essentially consumer-facing businesses. In manufacturing, the drop in global demand and also travel disruptions have had a negative impact on those manufacturing industries that are reliant on supply chains. And these are textiles, apparel, footwear. Again, these are sectors where women entrepreneurs are overrepresented. And data suggests that there's been a sharp drop-off in exports in these areas, and therefore having an impact on women. All MSMEs, particularly the micro and smaller ones, are very much reliant on cash flow. I think as someone mentioned earlier, they don't tend to have deep pockets. Credit is also a challenge. What's particularly concerning is that there's evidence that women have a more difficult time accessing credit, getting loans. And this may be a particular risk factor in a slowdown in economic activity. Remote working may also prove challenge for women, speaking globally, not speaking individually. We see that certain women-led businesses, as I mentioned, are customer-facing and do not lend themselves to pivot to a remote context. Haircuts, for example, can't be done remotely. Digital adoption as well. There's a gap between digital adoption among women and men. And this means fewer women are able to pivot readily to working in a remote environment. We've seen evidence of a rise in unpaid domestic work. That's essentially taking care of the kids who have had to stay home from school. This has fallen disproportionately on women. Often this has come at the expense of crowding out paid work. There's also been a rise in domestic violence, which has its negative social implications, but also has economic implications. So again, not to spoil the positive picture that we heard from colleagues on the panel, speaking to some women's experts in the APEC community just last week, I was told that their estimate was, at least in their economy, the pandemic has set back women's economic participation by perhaps a decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. I think Julia may be facing some technical difficulties. I will continue where she left off previously. Perhaps if we could hear from Diana, then your thoughts on this same issue. Diana, please.
Thank you. Actually, I think it's very similar to what Bernard has highlighted. And just a bit of background first, at United Nations SCAP, we have a program. It's called Catalyzing Women Entrepreneurship. And in that program, we aim to address issues that hinder entrepreneurship. So that can be on the access to finance side, business, ICT, support services and skills development, and also the policy and enabling environment around that. And I'm quite lucky because the program looks at ASEAN, both Cambodia and Vietnam, but also South Asia and Pacific. And we're seeing pretty consistent trends, I would say, across the board. Over the past few months, we've seen, I would say, very dramatic impacts on entrepreneurship globally, but also particularly on women entrepreneurs, but also on the positive side too, a lot of opportunities that are arising. On the negative side, I would say some of the issues that we've seen are basic food security issues, but also on the positive side, looking at more transformative impacts in terms of new business models being developed, entirely new value chains and supply chains being developed in very short periods of time. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in some of the other discussion points that we'll be talking about. But for women particularly, I think there's been challenges, and I think Bernard highlighted some of these already, particularly the time burden faced by women. Now that there's school closures, managing a business and managing the family has been more difficult. Also, we know that women often have less access to collateral and also access to loans. Access to financing issues have just been further taken forward in some of these challenges that we're seeing. In Cambodia, for example, we recently undertook an analysis on COVID-19 impacts on MSMEs, and some examples that we see there, challenges particularly in the informal sector. If you look at some IFC statistics, there's 61% of businesses in Cambodia are led by women, and particularly in the micro-enterprise sector. This high level of informality also results in not having access to benefits necessarily from the government because they're unregistered, and also the access to finance issues that persist. Also, in terms of informal enterprises, cash flow, and they don't usually have a lot of cash holdings or liquidity. So this shock of COVID-19 has really created serious cash flow issues. I would say though, on the positive side, I think what we're seeing is strong resilience and creativity. In some of the countries that we've been working in, we've been seeing people moving back away from the cities back to their hometowns, creating small businesses, creating more competition in the local markets. And it's also been quite interesting to see how there was a youth survey, and this was in our project in Samoa, looking at youth and their entrepreneurship capabilities. And most of them had identified entrepreneurship as a way out of the unemployment due to COVID. So I think there's a lot of kind of opportunities, but also challenges that we're facing right now. And the interesting thing to see is that there has been a collective movement, I would say, that we've seen towards entrepreneurship, innovation, and new ways of doing things.
Thank you very much, Diana. I'm back. I hope everybody can hear me now. Apologies, I got disconnected. So someone please tell me if you don't hear anything now. I think we can go ahead and move on with our second round of questions. We heard a lot about the digital transformation and how it's affecting ASEAN, a very fast and dynamic region. Also, as an opportunity and as a catalyst for entrepreneurship in general and for women entrepreneurship. many countries in the region, governments are also trying to support MSMEs to adopt digital technology, Industry 4.0, and reaps all the benefits. So let's zoom in and discuss a little bit about that with our speakers. Again, I would start with our three entrepreneurs, Fi, Lorenzi, and Rata. And I would ask her to share her thoughts with us. How do they see digital technology to be a catalyst or not to create more women entrepreneurs? And this time I would invite first Fivan to take the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I think digital transformation is basically a necessity, so everyone has to adopt it. You don't have a choice or an option to say, yes, I would like it, or I don't want it. Secondly, during when the pandemic started in Vietnam, even without the government being able to react, myself as an entrepreneur and a lot of people from different associations, we have already started the movement ourselves by creating channels for everyone, especially women-led businesses, to actually, number one, learn online about how to change their business models. Secondly, having mentors and coaches, like personal coaches, like they can register and have like half an hour with me or half an hour with another expert to help them explain what they need to do in order to transform their business model so that they can be sustainable in the future. So on the private sector level, there have been a lot of activities in Vietnam by different experts to help the community and help everyone at the whole to cope with the changes of the pandemic. Only yesterday, I had a meeting with a few colleagues of mine, especially those in the startup and innovation ecosystem, and we decided to create an angel fund only for women-led businesses. We will start very small so that we get the support from our close network first, and then from there we will then expand it further. So to me, why we're doing that is because number one, we see the difficulties for women to access credit, access finance, as you said before, and for us to be able to come up with a movement to get the government to basically change the policy or create a program or launch a fund. It is something that we have to do, but at the same time it's going to take a lot of time, and we don't have that time now. You either survive or you don't in this pandemic. So I guess the movement of the private sector and stakeholders in the ecosystem is very and super important, and they need to be engaged so that they can, together with us and with the government, help transform or digitalize our entrepreneurs, especially our women entrepreneurs. That's all for me.
Thank you, Fivan, also for reminding us the importance of the ecosystem. It's always, an ecosystem approach, and other pieces of the ecosystem are always extremely important to make sure that women entrepreneurs can thrive in such ecosystems. So let's now go to Indonesia with Lorencia. Lorencia, what can you share with us?
In Indonesia, digitalization not only during this pandemic, but before the pandemic is inevitable. Everyone needs to be adapt with the digitals. Everything need to be digitalized and using technology, especially in this industry 4.0, where in Southeast Asia, not many countries in Southeast Asia, they are going to industry 4.0. They are going to in industry 4.0, but some of the countries, like in Singapore, they are ahead from the other country in Southeast Asia. But in Indonesia, the e-commerce before the pandemic are increasing, and it happens, and the e-commerce itself are not just running by men, but most of them, almost women, trying to sell their products in marketplace. And during this pandemic, the marketplace in Indonesia, they are having more sellers and buyers. So there are so many opportunities that we can see in the positive way instead of the negative way, because during these pandemics, more people are jobless, and the economy are impacted by the pandemics. So they need to be creative, and they need to optimize all the digital technology that we can use it, like a marketplace, and then we use social media a lot. Some of them that maybe for the women who are not really familiar with marketplace or technology, they start from the social media, that they use for daily, like Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp. They start to promote their product in Facebook, Instagram. And so many in Indonesia, they use a WhatsApp group to sell their products. And it works because I have some groups in WhatsApps, like business WhatsApp group, and some of them promoted their products in their groups, and it helps them to grow their businesses during this pandemic. So I think I see that we are facing the challenges, but in other perspectives, we can make it as an opportunity for us, for women especially.
Thank you, Laurencia. What about Cambodia, Rata? What would you tell us?
Yeah, very similar story, but with Laurencia, that the e-commerce is emerging, and with the pandemic, is accelerate the industry 4.0. And for us, we see that the women, they have to adapt and reinvent themselves. For example, one of our vendor, before the pandemic, she sold cookie in the shape of the Angkor Wat, and it's it's bestseller, that everybody get a package because the tourists come, and then they just buy and take it to as a souvenir. But during the pandemic, her business need to all her stock all expire because the cookie has expiration date. So she had to burn her cookie because the retailer returned to her when it already expired. So she cannot give away, she cannot give it to the children or anything like that. So she had to burn out. So that was a very difficult time for her. But she, with this, she think out other way to improve her change her creativity. She made a macaroon instead. So she repackaging the box to make it attract to the Cambodian people, because for us Cambodian people, we think that when it has the Angkor Wat, it's just for tourists. So nobody buy a product locally. So she repackaged a product to make it attractive. And now she sold in our marketplace, is our bestseller, because now and people start to adapt. And from the experience, I help a lot of people converting to learn how to use online to buy through application, because before they just buy it from Facebook, they just send comment. But now we help them to be able to download the app, and they be able to buy it on the app instead. So we invest in teaching them in the first time, but the return, it's easy for us. So the next time they order, they just order on the app without us get involved. So that was a good investment in for us. We also use like Laurentia, Facebook and GI, all those things. But we found that it's very time consuming. We need a lot of people to engage all the time. They answer questions. So that is our strategy. We try to convert them. Right now, we have about 50% of the people who chat to us through Messenger and convert them to buy it on the app. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rata. Now, I mean, we have started discussing about, different ways of selling by using digital technologies. We were saying before that at SCAP, Diana is also active on fintech and digital skills for women entrepreneurs. So I would ask her now to share some lesson with us. I mean, trends, what she has observed regarding fintech and digital skills that will be so relevant for the post-pandemic economic recovery. Diana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, as mentioned, at SCAP, we have a partnership that's with UNCDF, and we have a FinTech Challenge Fund. So what that is we provide financial and technical assistance to fintechs to develop new solutions for women entrepreneurs. And what we've seen, a lot of our fintech solutions are in the payments sector, for one, and I have some reflections on that. But I would say generally what we've seen is an incredible move towards digital in the past few months, particularly in terms of e-commerce and digital payments. COVID has seemed to really act as a catalyst, moving people towards digital platforms at an accelerated rate, and I think that that will definitely continue beyond this crisis. In terms of lessons that we've seen, while we've seen the move to digital, I think one of the things we really need to consider is that we can't assume all people have access and the skills to use digital solutions, particularly when it comes to digital finance. We need to remember that there's, this is an increasingly stressful time right now. And when it comes to money is even more stressful. Women often have less access to ICT and digital services and less know-how in using such services. So some of the learnings that we've had from that in the payment space is the importance of making rural cash-in, cash-out agents as essential workers and allowing people to access cash when they need it the most. Also equipping those agents with the skills to be able to onboard and support women in using digital finance and payment services to make the experience much less stressful for them. And also the need to continually build out these types of agent networks. We also need to be careful that we're not creating, a bigger digital divide and widening that. But one example that I'll give, particularly from some of the learnings and I think some of the business models that we've seen and how they're transforming, is from a project that we have, and I'm sorry it's not in ASEAN, it's in Bangladesh, but it's called iFarmer. And it's a peer-to-peer lending platform basically designed for urban middle-income investors, providing financing to rural women farmers who essentially raise and fatten cows and then sell them for a profit. And those profits are around 30% on return on investment, which is quite good both for the farmers and for the investors. During the pandemic, all of these lockdowns resulted in markets shutting down as well, and the ability to buy and sell cows was no longer there. It created food security issues in the country, and also for the farmers and the women entrepreneurs who are selling these cows, their income streams diminished. What happened as a result was they devised a new business model and that they had planned actually to launch in 1 or 2 years from now, but they did it and launched it within 1 week time, which is amazing. They moved towards vegetable, fish farming. They also created an entirely new value chain, both through e-commerce mechanisms, through selling the vegetables, and also logistical mechanisms to transport those vegetables. And as I mentioned, created this entirely in 1 week. So I think it really shows the incredible speed and ingenuity that we're seeing in the fintech space. I think it also will be the future of how we're seeing in terms of the adaptation of markets and change, and also the creating of new business models and types and ways of doing business through digital platforms.
Thank you very much, Diana. I think these transformations are amazing, and we have been observing also the area similar dynamics in countries like India or Myanmar, and we are very ready to learn and understand more about these dynamics. Now, let's move to Bernard, APEC. Bernard, if we look at the future, what do you think that international policy fora like APEC can do to promote female entrepreneurship as one of the building blocks of the post-pandemic economic recovery? Bernard, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think your question puts a finger on the answer. It's policy. So what we try to do in APEC is to help member governments get their policy settings right, to provide the enabling environment for business as a whole, to promote open markets as a whole, which supports business, and also to address any structural issues that may have impacts on women entrepreneurs in particular. So how do we do that? So briefly, just a few thoughts. One is through data. One is through mainstreaming. One is through targeted work streams, and then the last is I'll call narrative. On data, we've created a dashboard that about 95 indicators of women's economic participation, looking at things such as access to capital, access to markets, skills, educational attainment, leadership, and the like. So it's something that we hope, akin to the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, it's something we hope that it helps focus the minds of policymakers on where the gaps lie and hopefully motivate them to actually address these. The dashboard also serves another useful function in underscoring the importance of collecting sex disaggregated data. So in some areas critical to women's entrepreneurship, for example, access to credit or digital access to technology, digital skills and like, many economies don't actually collect data on a gender disaggregated basis. And so they don't have a clear enough picture to the extent that there are issues to address. And therefore, policies are not necessarily addressing issues to the extent they might need to. Mainstreaming, this is something, a bit more of an internal thing, is of all the projects that come through APEC in a given year, 100 or so, dealing with any sorts of issues related to trade or the like, we challenge the organizers with a gender analysis saying, have you considered the gender implications of this? And if not, do so. It's somewhat akin to what is done by a number of governments in their own domestic policy development. Again, the point here is to underscore that gender empowerment is not an issue to be left to simply the ministers responsible for women, but to be embraced by everyone. Targeted work streams. Last year, APEC ministers endorsed the La Serena Roadmap on Women and Inclusive Growth. This is an ambitious plan that calls for APEC-wide actions that address a broad range of issues of importance to women's economic participation. Again, access to credit and markets, labor force participation, leadership, and training. Progress on actions in these areas will be monitored. They will be monitored and measured against the dashboard I mentioned, and they'll be reported to ministers on a regular basis. And lastly, I'll just speak about narrative. Forums such as APEC bring together ministers and leaders annually to talk about the broader issues of the day. They set the tone for government work that follows, and also sets the tone for business and society following. I think it's important here for leaders to change the narrative, or shift the narrative on women's economic participation, more away from simply a question of inclusion to really the question of women's entrepreneurship is a potential driver, a potential strong driver that is currently underutilized or under-tapped. And in a post-pandemic environment where economies will be needing to draw on every corner of resource, every corner of growth, it's an obvious solution to enable and empower women's entrepreneurship in this connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. I saw that many questions are coming to the chat box, so I would immediately give the floor to TJ for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Julia. I have a few questions that have appeared in the chat box. Let me try to kind of put them together. And I'll start with the easy one first. And this will probably be perhaps to start off addressed to our female entrepreneurs here. There was a question that was asked that, what kinds of products and services have you observed that the women entrepreneurs tend to be marketing, whether through your business connections or through the platforms that you've been involved in? And I guess, is there a certain commonality? So are there common products that are being sold? So maybe I will start with Radha, since she is managing actually a marketplace, a e-commerce platform. You shared a little bit earlier, but for Radha, what do you see a trend in terms of the types of things or services that the women entrepreneurs are selling at this point in time?
Thank you for the question. Basically, we see a lot of weird variety of category. Right now, category going from online is no such thing as a big item anymore. Any category can go online right now. They can buy from car until buy house online. But the most important, the category that sell the best is food. Still food. Food is the easiest to sell. Handicraft, all those things is very picky. It's because when people think about pandemic, they think about how to want to save money. They always think the first instinct is how to survive. So they save money, not to spend on the expense stuff, but just day-to-day eating. So we see grocery, easy to sell, food, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All necessary stuff every day.
Yes. Yeah, I think especially in ASEAN, food will never go wrong.
Yeah.
Phi Van, what about you from Vietnam's perspective? Do you see any common trends in terms of the products and services that the women entrepreneurs have been engaging in?
I think mostly basic needs products. So obviously a lot of homemade food, safe food, natural food, grandma's food, that sort of thing. Anything you could think of. And then obviously health and wellness products. So things that make you relax. Ointment, makeup products as well, actually doing pretty well in our market at the moment. Anything that help you with safety, so hand sanitizer, sanitizer products for your house, for your family, for your car, whatever.
Okay.
Do very well, yeah.
Thank you very much. Laurentia, how about from Indonesia?
Well, the same like other countries from Southeast Asia. Mostly food, frozen food, food supplies, and then personal protective equipments like hand sanitizers, alcohols, and clothes, masks. And some of them makes like really pretty masks. They sell with various models and fashionable, and with a higher price, but the demand is quite high in Indonesia. And some of Indonesian, they are really like to open pre-order. So they will open pre-order for food. It's like when I live in Yogyakarta, because I cannot travel to Bali now. So some of them will offer like pre-order food from Bali. So they will sell it with a higher price, like 50%, 10 to 50% of profits from the original price. But many people would like to buy the food because they will spend on the food more expensive food, but they can eat without traveling to like Bali or any other cities in Indonesia. So it becomes a trend in Indonesia for pre-order products, especially food from around Indonesia, like other cities. They will open from Jakarta to Yogyakarta, Bali to Jakarta, and it become really trend in Indonesia now.
Okay.
And many women do that. And
Okay.
like multi-level marketing are happening now, especially who sells healthy products like vitamins.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So to the participant who was asking that question, I think if you go along the lines of what has been shared, food, health and wellness, safety, you know, especially for food, if you cannot go to the place, bring the food from that place back to where you are. Yeah. Okay, then the next question, I'm going to just recraft this a little bit, because pretty much every speaker that we have has been talking to some extent really about policy, about engagement, you know, and I would like to ask from a point of the business to government, so public-private sector engagement. Where do you see things at this point in time, and how do you think that perhaps the women entrepreneurs can be more engaged moving forward? Let me perhaps ask Bernard first. You know, what are your thoughts on this? And then I'll probably follow up with Diana on this as well. So Bernard, please.
Yes, I think you highlighted a very good point of the need for engagement, and I think it's absolutely essential from a government perspective, which is the ecosystem that I am familiar with more, is that the input directly from entrepreneurs is absolutely essential. Governments are fairly reactive. We see. We may be able to identify problems, as indicated before, collecting data and analyzing it properly. We may identify gaps, but that doesn't mean solutions are obvious, particularly solutions that work with the private sector. And even well-meaning government interventions, whether they're about equal pay, whether they're about parental leave, whether about childcare, may be well-meaning, but they may not necessarily align with how business operates. So the input is essential. How that should be done, I'm not sure I have an immediate answer for you. I know in APEC we have a built-in partner called the APEC Business Advisory Council, which means business sits at the table with ministers and regularly shares a perspective from the business communities. But it is hoped that this is done at a national level as well, where governments will hear directly from business. And it's important to hear not simply from big business, which is the traditional voice, but from the startup community, the colleagues that we have on the panel today, who are talking very much about the new ideas and the new issues. Often I'm not sure all governments are listening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Bernard. Diana, any thoughts from you? Quick thoughts.
Yeah, following up on that, I completely agree. And I think that we've seen kind of different experiences in different countries. Particularly, I agree on the reactive aspect. We've engaged with many governments going forward now, assessing what has been the impact on micro and small entrepreneurs, and engaging in kind of policy dialogues and discussions around that. I think the big thing that has come out from all of our discussions is the issue of informality. There are mechanisms, particularly with the chambers of commerce and other institutions, that mobilize the private sector and engage with the governments. That is not necessarily as true with the informal sector. And being able to reach them through government policies, government stimulus plans, and things like that for the business community has been very difficult. And identifying, I think some of the discussions we've been having is how to formalize more businesses, how to create incentive mechanisms that maybe aren't related to tax, but support the formalization of very small businesses, or at least the registry of such businesses. That's been kind of one of the lead discussion points that we've been having.
Thank you very much, Diana. In the interest of time, I will just choose one of our three entrepreneurs to share her thoughts. Let's have Ratha. You know, how do you see the whole business to government engagement, perhaps in your own country, and also, you know, how can the women entrepreneurs be more engaged? If I could give you about a minute to just share your thoughts.
Right now, women. We offer women a lot of participation into formal market. They need to be involved in the association. They need to be involved in different parts like CWEA, She Investment. Those, when we put together, we form a collective voice that we can talk to the government. So right now, we encourage them to participate in our formal group, so that we can represent just one voice to the government, and a stronger voice. Anything that they feel that they need, they can talk to us. Any policy that they want to do, we can take it to the government and fight for it. So we win a lot of policy, a lot of stimulus plan that through we partner with MOVA, Ministry of Women Affairs, to organize this. And it's such a great movement. We haven't seen a lot of positive feedback from this. Like for example, Dina was at She Investment also. They organize such, right now they have this formal, they got sponsor from my enterprise that they can help teach women technology. They provide a laptop for them. And then they learn them, teach them how to go online, teach them the basic stuff. So we encourage the women to get, be a part of a group, be a part of organization, so that they can move faster into the formal market.
Okay, thank you so much, Ratha. So adapting, innovating, be creative, and I think coming together as one voice, learning from each other. You know, like what Fee was mentioning earlier, the mentoring, that you have somebody to be with you in this journey, that you're not alone. I think it was equally echoed by Ratha as well as Laurentia. So these are some thoughts from our entrepreneurs. So thank you very much for your questions. And I'll just now pass the floor back to Julia.
Thank you so much, TJ, for this additional very interesting conversation and remarks. I think it's now time to close, but I would like to thank once again all the speakers for your extremely insightful thoughts today, and for the so many participants that connected with us to discuss about this very important topic. And as usual, I think you saw some links in the chat box, so feel free to open them and read them as you want. And you will hear soon from us regarding the next episode of the series. Thank you very much again, and goodbye, and see you soon.